Welcome into the amazing gallery bar booking games in Ocean Casino here in Atlantic City, and welcome into the Malamut Law pregame show ahead of Eagles-Seahawks kicking off on Monday Night Football. And if you like storylines, oh man, we got a lot of them. Matt Patricia now the defensive coordinator, but not the defensive coordinator, the play caller, the defensive play caller for the Philadelphia Eagles. Sean Desai out, at least to a different part of the football field, the booth maybe. And, of course, Matt Patricia taking over the play calling responsibilities on the field, pencil in ear and all, for this Philadelphia Eagles defense that has just been spanked over the last 2 weeks. The unfortunate part of all of that is also that the offense has come up very small in those games. So will there be more changes to come for the Eagles going forward? This 10-3 football team that has already clinched a third consecutive playoff berth. Wow, a lot to get into today. Here's one thing that we do know going into the game. It is yet to be officially official, but it does look like Jalen Hurts, despite the fact that he was sick, still flying out to Seattle on a different plane than the rest of the team, will be up and active today. That'll be officially official in about 15 minutes there as we wait for the official inactives report. But welcome into the show. My name is Mark Farzetta. This is Bill Colarulo, of course, of Legal Hands to the Face podcast, as well as the Philly Sports Power Hour. And by now a man that, of course, needs no introduction, the Eagles Hall of Famer himself, Mr. Seth Joyner. Seth, first and foremost, what kind of changes can we expect with Matt Patricia's defense now?
Well, I don't think we can expect much change. I mean, you're not going to change the style of defense that you play. I'm sure that Matt Patricia has been in these meeting rooms ever since training camp started. So it's highly likely, how he's going to affect the game is that the defense is going to look similar. I hope that they can execute a lot better than they've been executing. The other thing is, you may see a little more man coverage. You may see some variations in, how they play zone and how much zone they play. You may even see, some variations in early down run blitzes and different things of that nature. But at this point in time, you can't change a whole lot. This move, from what I get, and this was the key for me, the telltale sign was when Kevin Byard suggested earlier in the week that, the defensive backs be allowed to put together their own scouting report. I found that strange for two reasons. First of all, as a player, what you should be doing, like when I studied film, I had my week broken out. Now, the coach would give us the scouting report, and they would give us the data analytics. The crazy thing is they never really taught us how to read the data analytics, but you had it in a format where you could really understand it. But when I studied, I broke everything down by days, and I would chart everything, all the run plays and their tendencies, all the pass plays and their tendencies, all their short yardage and goal line plays and their tendencies. So the game plan was nothing more than a confirmation of the data analytics that I created through my study. Now, you give these players one of these now, all that information is on there for them, so they don't study that way anymore. They don't have to put pen to paper. And you only retain information, in my opinion, when you actually study it and you write it down yourself. But if you give it to me in this format, it's like watching a video. So all I'm doing is watching it, but I'm not necessarily retaining it. So when I saw that and their lack of confidence in the fact that, the scouting reporting that they was getting each week wasn't giving them the information that they needed, that was the first telltale sign that something was amiss. So when you look at this change, how much confidence are they going to have in Matt Patricia? How much confidence are they going to have in the insurance policy? And the Eagles are infamous for doing this. They always got a backup plan to the original plan just in case something goes sideways. You don't believe me? Go back and look at Doug Peterson. They hired Jim Schwartz before they even hired Doug Peterson. The head coach is usually the guy who hires his defensive coordinator. You can go way back. You had Todd Bowles sitting in the wings waiting for Juan Castillo to fall apart. He stepped in and took over. So when you consider the history of the Eagles and how they conduct business, this doesn't surprise me. What surprises me is the time of the year that they've decided to do it, because you can't just throw your whole defense out the window and implement a whole new defense. Who they are is who they are. The only thing that's going to change is how he calls defenses and how he, whether he decides to blitz more or whether he decides to implement run blitzes, whether he decides to play the cornerbacks more aggressive or more passive. So they are who they are at this point. The players have just got to execute what's being called.
Yeah, he's not going to hit a reset button right now, as I feel that the Eagles have hit a panic button on their defense. So, Bill, I'll ask you this question. Seth, I'll ask you the same one in a second. Is this a panic move? Do you get the feeling this is a panic move by the Philadelphia Eagles, or a move that absolutely had to be done now?
I don't necessarily think it's a panic move. I think the problem is they lack the personnel on the defensive side of the ball. We've talked about it before. You can't blow up your entire roster this late in the season. Trade deadline's over. Any free agents that were available, they've already tried to get in Shaq Leonard, Zach Cunningham they got earlier in the season. They made the trade for Kevin Byard. This is who we have, unfortunately. I don't think the personnel is good enough. So I think the only option they had to try to fix something, to try to change something, is the defensive coordinator. What else could they do at this point in the season? So I don't think it was a panic move necessarily. We all have seen it. It's not only the last 2 games. It's been 13 games now where this defense has struggled. Outside of a few halves here or there, good half against the Dolphins, a good half against the Rams, they let Mac Jones throw for 300 yards the first game of the season. So we kept saying, oh, well, they keep winning, they keep winning. The defensive personnel is not good enough, and that is Howie Roseman, not Sean Desai. Not that Desai was doing a great job. I don't think he was. But I think the problems we see on the defensive side of the ball is because there is a severe lack of young talent outside of the D-tackle position that are still contributing on their rookie deals.
Gotcha. Well, you know, Bill, in a lot of situations, you know, the players are like pieces on a chessboard. You've got to put them in position to be successful. When I see a move like this being made, then the question always comes to my mind, you know, and I think we know the answer just based upon how it all came about. Nick Sirianni was asked earlier in the week about changes to his staff, and it was an emphatic no. Okay, so in my mind, that's almost like, you know, Pinocchio pointing out to everybody, you got potential and you got potential. You know, at some point in time, one or two things happen, because they didn't just make this decision and make this move at the end of the week. Either Nick Sirianni knew that this was going to happen, or it already happened internally, or later in the week, somebody made a decision from upstairs to make this move, you know. So the problem that I have with it is the message that's sent to your players, because if Kevin Byard's, you know, ask has something to do with it. If the players were truly, you know, in a position where they lost confidence in Sean Desai, how does that filter to everybody else? Because ultimately, yes, the coaches have to put them in better positions to execute, but they haven't executed at all, you know. And statistically, not only on the defensive side of the ball, this football team has gotten worse and worse all season long. I mean, I chart the stats every single week. So when I take this page and I fold it over and I look at us offensively, we've dropped in points per game from last week to this week. We've dropped in yards per game. Well, we dropped in points per game, you know, yards per game. We dropped in third down conversions. We've dropped in red zone. We've dropped in rush yards. We've dropped in pass yards, you know. So it's not just the defense. It's the entire team is not playing up to the level that it needs to play to. Yes, the coaches bear some responsibility in that, but also it's up to the players, you know, to make bad calls and calls that seem like they won't work with your hustle, your intensity, and your want to.
I'm going to ask you real quick about the panic move of it all, but we're going to talk to our friend Adam Malamut here, who is joining us remotely. Adam, we appreciate you taking time. You're in your Sprinter van right now. This thing is absolutely incredible. That if you can show us a little bit of the van, and then obviously give us your gut feeling about tonight's matchup. We may have him muted, or we are having an audio problem. But I like you in front of you on your screen. This is all the Malamut I can handle right there. We're going to try to check back with you in just a second, Adam. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back with you in 1 minute. But Seth, do you feel that it is a panic move making this decision, or is this absolutely justified?
Well,
a need, if you will.
I think it's a panic move just because of when it happened.
4 games left in the season.
When it happened.
Yeah.
Because the question is, how much of a difference is Matt Patricia going to be able to make, you know, in 1 week's time? I don't think it's a panic move because at the other end of the spectrum, because when you look at them statistically, they can't get any worse than they already are. So it's almost like you have to do something. And if you get the sense in some way, some fashion, that your players don't believe in, or they're not buying into what the defensive coordinator is selling, then you absolutely have to make a move.
Gotcha. Bill, what was your reaction to it? Because I know we have talked, as you alluded to earlier, we've talked about the talent versus the coaching here. And all of a sudden, I don't see guys like Josh Sweat as a bad football player. I still think he's a good football player. I don't think he's being coached well. Hassan Reddick seems to be, no matter what system he's in, who his defensive coordinator is, he's going to get to the quarterback. He understands his responsibility. But when you talk about everybody else, everything else has looked very much off kilter under Sean Desai.
They still have talent on the defensive side of the ball in areas. The problem is they just don't have enough. And you look at the defensive line, Josh Sweat, very good player. Hassan Reddick, very good player. These guys are going to break career highs in snaps. I think Josh Sweat already has. So they're not as deep on the edge as we thought they would be, mainly because Derek Barnett was brought back. He's given us nothing. He's not even on the team anymore. Nolan Smith, drafted in the first round, hasn't really contributed. So I've been saying all along, I don't think it was all Sean Desai, but like I said, my initial reaction was, okay, at least they're trying something. Because like Seth said, it can't get much worse. And what I was hoping was, use a hockey analogy, you guys know I like my NHL, is sometimes you change the head coach and that can spark a team. They play with a little bit more aggression. They play with a little bit more desire. And how many missed tackles have we seen on the defensive side of the ball? Hopefully this is a little bit of a wake-up call for that defense to say, hey, look, we got to play harder. Seth said tackling is an attitude. Well, maybe they come out with a little more attitude now that there's been this change made.
We're going to go one more time to our friend Adam Malamut here, who is always bringing the attitude. Adam, first up, this is your Sprinter van, correct? This is what you buzz around the nation in?
Come on, man. It's Malamut 1.
Malamut 1. I absolutely love it. And where is Malamut 1 right now?
Oh, I can't tell you. I'd have to kill you.
You're in the Bat Cave. This is your Malamut 1 mobile.
I'm on my way to a special family event. And,
nice.
I never miss a family event, but
sure.
I never want to miss our show. So, I miss being there with you guys. I'm kind of jealous because Bill gets to sit next to Seth, who's wearing this sharp suit tonight. Forget Dallas being America's team. Seth is America's broadcaster tonight. I love it, Seth.
Adam, what was your reaction to the Sean Desai news and moving Matt Patricia into quote-unquote defensive play caller?
I'll tell you exactly what it is. I think that, and I heard what Bill had to say and I heard what Seth had to say. I think that players respond to different voices at different times. And clearly, although we don't have linebackers, although our defensive secondary was not playing the way we expected them to play this season, sometimes you just need to hear it and you need to be motivated by somebody else. I'll tell you, my elf on a shelf would have been more motivating than what we saw out of this talented group, at least in the front, right? So our guys up front aren't getting any pressure. They're not getting to the quarterback like we expected them to. We didn't expect last season's stats, but we expected them to touch quarterbacks. We expected them to knock some people down. That hasn't been happening. My hope is that they respond to Matt Patricia differently than how they've responded so far to Sean Desai. And I'm not joking about the elf on the shelf. He's kind of tough.
Adam, you guys know I'm old school. We talk about motivation like players need to get it from somewhere else. A lot of these guys are going to the window and pulling down $1 million, $2 million, $500,000, $250,000 every single week. If that's not part of your motivation, the other part is the motivation to be great at what you do. Now, this team went to the Super Bowl and came within 3 points of winning last year. Their battle cry in training camp was to get back to the Super Bowl and finish the job. Now, you tell me, why is it that a coach would have to motivate you if that is your end goal? The older players on this football team, the veterans, the leaders of this football team, I'm sure they've chided, the young guys and the guys who haven't been in this position before, to come on, guys, let's get it done. This is what, but you know what? You went from being solidified in the number one seed of the conference, and your division, to falling down in back-to-back weeks, understanding how important, winning those two games were. As a player, if you can't motivate yourself, how much do we expect for Nick Sirianni or Sean Desai or Brian Johnson or Matt Patricia, for that matter, to motivate players to go and do what they say that they love to do and what they're being paid a king's ransom to play for?
Seth, I have a great answer for you. I'd like to start with Dallas sucks. Now, the second part of my answer is, Seth, you're imposing on these young guys, and you and I have had these conversations, these young guys who don't value like players from your era, not to date you and not that you're that old, but players in your era really had to work. They had a different appreciation for the game. You're imposing on them the same set of values that you had. There were players when you played that didn't value it as much. There were players that spent their paychecks and would, race to get to the beginning of the season so they can get their checks again. These guys, they don't all have the same values. They don't all have the same work ethic. A lot of these guys think that the toughest thing to do is to get to the league. They don't realize that the toughest thing to do is to stay in the league. So when you talk about the veterans and the guys up front and the guys on the other side of the line that really do work, those guys, I believe, share those values. But there are a certain sect of folks, and I'm not going to start naming people, but there's a sect of folks that certainly don't have those values. I know that our viewers, and I've watched the chat on our shows, these aren't people that are making millions of dollars a year, but I guarantee you that every single one of our viewers, if they had the incentive of going out and making, $500,000 to $1 million paychecks per week to show up for work, they'd show up and they would grind. They would crank it out. These guys, and I'm going to call them kids because, I'm in your generation, Seth. They're not motivated like that. It's not, it's, hey, I've made it, I've arrived, I've gotten to the league. Unfortunately, a lot of these guys are the same people that, won't benefit from the financial literacy programs that are provided by the NFL Players Association and a lot of the other things that, the mentors around them. They won't learn from people's mistakes. They've got to make their own, and they're making mistakes by underestimating opponents that they should be beating week after week.
Adam, I know you got to get running, man, so I got to get your prediction. Eagles, Seahawks, Monday Night Football. What do you got?
So I missed it. Is Geno Smith playing or not playing?
He is up playing today, and so is Jalen Hurts, both active today.
Well, I know Jalen's playing because Jalen's a winner. So I'm going to tell you that I think that this team comes out with something to prove. I think that defensively they crush the Seahawks. I think it's going to be 28-7.
28-7. God, I hope you're right. From Malamut 1.
And you're welcome. You can bet that if you want.
Oh, I'm gonna walk right over to the window. It's right over there. I'm gonna take care of that right now.
It's right there. Take care of that.
Oh, well, when we go to break. Adam, thanks so much. From Malamut 1, Adam Malamut joining us here on the Malamut pregame show.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Adam Malamut, right. Malamut Law at a family undisclosed location other than Malamut 1. Sprinter vans are pretty cool, and he looks like he's enjoying the hell out of that, as he should be. So we've been talking a lot about Matt Patricia. There's another storyline that gets involved here, and yes, by the way, the inactives did officially come out. Officially official now. Jalen Hurts is up and active today. He'll be starting under center for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Geno Smith is also active today, despite the groin injury, and he'll be starting for the Seattle Seahawks tonight with their 8:15 kickoff. Some other inactives, as we know. Darius Slay, we'll get to him. Some more news about him throughout the week. We'll get to that. Keely Ringo will be getting the start at corner for the Eagles. Cam Jurgens down today. That was a question going into the game. Sui Opeta is getting the start today, and Zach Cunningham officially being out, as we knew going into the game with his knee injury. Shaq Leonard will now get his first start as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. So piecemealing this together quite literally when it comes to some of these players, and it also comes to the man that will be calling the plays defensively in Matt Patricia. Seth, I have to ask you this question. A couple of things surrounding Darius Slay in all of this. One is the surgery. Having the surgery now, basically his knee being scoped at this point in the year, said he will be back. Again, 4 games left in the season, choosing to have that now. The other storyline attached to this is the history there with Matt Patricia, and oh my goodness, if you have forgotten it, it's juicy. When you look at this history now, is it because Matt Patricia is now the de facto defensive coordinator that Darius Slay chose to have this surgery? Do you buy in to that storyline?
No, I'm not so sure that, that's the case. Slay's been under a lot of heat the last 2 or 3 weeks for comments that he's made and some things that he said. It really took me aback what he said this week about the fact that you know, he thought he played well, but the rest of the team, you know, pretty much stunk. You know, dude, you're wearing the C on your jersey. You're a captain. How could you be so unaware of the circumstances and the situation as to make a statement like that? You know, your defense that you're a part of gave up 37.5 points per game over the last 2 games on average. And no one plays well, or no one has played good, you know, in that scenario. So I don't know. You know, it doesn't really concern me, you know, whether he actually decided to get the surgery because Matt Patricia was now the guy up or not. What concerns me is the optics of, you know, some of the things that he says and how he acts when it comes to, you know, being a captain on his football team, because that's not the type of leadership, you know, during tough and hard times that you need. You need your leaders to be leaders. You need guys like Fletcher Cox who stood up and said, you know, hey, none of us played well. We're going to find out what we're all about. Not trying to separate yourself and say, well, you know what, I played well. I don't know about everybody else. Because as long as you got the green on, whatever's on that field is reflective of you. You know, I talked about it all the time because I've been on good teams and I've been on bad teams. And one thing that's prevalent with bad teams is players on that team trying to separate themselves from the L's, you know, trying to make themselves look like, you know, they're more important or they've done more, you know, throughout the course, because that's the only thing they have to hang their hats on. Now, this football team is 10-3. Not by any stretch of the imagination are they a team in a losing mode. But when those kinds of attitudes begin to permeate your team, that's not good for your team. And to be honest with you, I'm happy to see, you know, Keely Ringo getting a start tonight. I hope he locks it, you know, tears it up and plays so well they have a hard time taking him off the field.
I hope so as well. Bill, what is your take on it as to why Darius Slay had this surgery now?
I don't think it had anything to do with Matt Patricia. As much as I agree with Seth, I don't love the way Darius Slay finds the need to respond to everything. I mean, hey, it's great for us. He wants to respond to everything we say. But it's even after he responds to Seth, and there was that whole battle, he's retweeting people, Dan Sileo. He's retweeting.
Yeah, Sil's got to know. You were telling, yeah.
Retweeting WIP today. It's, you know, Slay, we get it, man. You think you've played well, but I think he just needs to stop. And someone in the organization, whether it's Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman, someone needs to go to him and say, listen, you need to be a team guy here. And he's not wrong. If you look at the numbers, Slay hasn't played horribly this season.
And he's been their best corner.
He probably gets a little bit more heat than he deserves at times.
It's not about that.
Exactly.
No, I understand what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not about that.
It's not about that. That's what I mean. It's not that he's wrong, but he shouldn't be saying it when you get dominated. And then he followed it up, Seth. He goes, you know, I played great, but the rest of the team played ass, is what I think he said. Something like that.
Well, I don't think he was, in all honesty, yes, he excluded himself by talking about how great he was, but I don't think he was saying it was separate. But he said, as a team, we played like ass.
Yeah.
So he wasn't, like, excluding himself from that, but he was highlighting
how good
his own greatness.
Which I completely disagree that he does that, especially as a captain. But this isn't the first time we've seen it, Seth. You remember on Christmas Day last year, they gave up that long pass play on that 3rd and long against the Dallas Cowboys when they were up. And Darius Slay made sure everybody knew that wasn't him getting beat. That was the other guy didn't have his job. I think it was Josiah Scott. And he made a comment immediately in the locker room that Scott blew the coverage. That's not something I think a captain should do.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that.
Well, and it's just you got to take the temperature of the environment that you're in. You know, I just, to me, nobody gives a damn about, you know, how players play individually. I think, you know, the PFF grades that come out every week are one of the most detrimental things, because people like to run to that like that's the gospel, so to speak. And nobody really cares, because at the end of the day, are you playing for yourself? Are you playing for the best grade that you can have? You know, is he positioning himself because he realized that potentially this could be his last year in an Eagles uniform, and he needs to begin to position himself for where he may end up next year if he decides to continue to play? I don't know what it is, you know, but this isn't a team thing, you know, that he's got going on. This whole podcast that he's got going on, this whole thing about himself, him wanting to talk about himself. And people are like, oh, you know, I have no problem with Darius Slay defending himself. Why? Why do you have rabbit ears? You know, the same way that you have a job to play football, I'm sitting at this desk because I got a job to analyze the game of football for the Philadelphia Eagles and analyze what they do, okay? I can't change the way he plays any more than he can change the words that are going to come out of my mouth as I analyze the game according to how I see the game. So why would you even care? You don't have to go out and explain to the world, that you're the best thing since sliced bread. You're on a team that hasn't played well. I think it's 105 points that they've given up over the last 3 games, okay? Your name is attached to that just as much as anybody else on that defense or any other coach on that side of the coaching staff. You understand what I'm saying? So you trying to distance yourself from that by talking about how well you played is a misnomer, because you know what? When we talk about the defense as a whole, you're a part of that.
Let me ask you this question then, because I know we can't expect a whole change of this defense from just one, essentially yesterday. You have Matt Patricia being named your play caller on the defensive side of the football here. But what is something that you do expect or would really like to see? You could walk away from this. Let's say it's a close game, the Eagles win the game, the defense doesn't get blown out. But let's just say after this game, Eagles walk away with a win. The defense has done what? A little bit differently to make you happy. Bill, I'll start with you.
I'd just like to see them be more aggressive across the board. And I don't necessarily mean by blitzing. I just mean more aggressive in, yes, getting after the quarterback, whether that's with their front 4, whether they do bring some more blitzes. I want to see them be more aggressive with their coverages, getting these wide receivers' face a little bit. Keely Ringo is a big guy. I'd like to see him play well and play physical. Not going to be easy going up against DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. These guys are good wide receivers, but I'd like to see that. But I really want to see them just tackle better and attack the football better. They're 20th in the league in takeaways. They've struggled all season in taking the ball away. I'd like to see that a part of their game as well. Let's try to create some turnovers. Let's be good tacklers, and let's just be overall more aggressive in this football game. That's what I'd like to see.
Seth, what do you need to see in order to walk away from this game and go, okay, there's a little hope here with Matt Patricia making the play calls?
A lot of those things, that Bill just espoused, are the same with me. The cornerbacks need to get up and challenge people at the line of scrimmage. You need to be a lot more aggressive, especially on first down. I can assure you with those 2 running backs, with Walker and Carbonet, they're going to come out and they're going to try to pound the football. The Eagles, have precipitously fell, in their run defense. I think they're giving up 163 yards per game over the last 3 or 4 games. So they're going to test the defense and find out whether they can stand up and whether they can stop the run. Be more aggressive on first and second down. Show me some creativity in your blitzes besides just sending Nicholas Morrow running up the middle and having an offensive lineman hit him in the chest. Show me something. Show me something. Show them something. Everyone's so afraid of blitzing. But my thing is, okay, you got Geno Smith is playing tonight. He's up. He's obviously not going to be mobile. He's going to be looking to get that ball out of his hands pretty quick. So if you're playing off the ball 10 yards, he is going to take what the defense gives him. So you're going to have to get up and challenge the wide receivers at the line of scrimmage. You're going to have to come with some blitzes to put some pressure on him. You know he can't move. You know he can't get away. And have a sense of urgency. The Cowboys did what the Cowboys do, okay? They fell down yesterday. They gave us the lead in the division back. Now all we've got to do is go in and do what we have to do our part, okay? That requires a greater sense of urgency than what we've seen over the last 2 weeks. This game is a must-win game for them. And they've got to play like, you know what? If we don't win, they can't look at yesterday and realize that because the San Francisco 49ers won yesterday, that gave them an automatic bid, into the playoffs, that they got an automatic spot. They need to play this game like their playoff life depends on it. Like, you know what? We're not going to make the playoffs if we don't win this game. A greater sense of urgency, a greater level of intensity, because I can promise you the Seattle Seahawks are going to come out. They've lost, 4 or 5 games in a row. They know that they have to win this game to keep their playoff hopes alive. They're going to come out swinging with their hair on fire, and if the Eagles don't respond to it early, then they're going to be another one of these games where they're going to have to fight to the end.
Mm-hmm. I'm hoping in a game like this, Geno Smith with his groin injury is a pork chop in a lion's den for the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's, you talk about aggression, both of you, not just in getting after the quarterback, but sure, and maybe not allowing that much cushion with the wide receiver being aggressive. That's what I'm hoping to see from this football team tonight.
One more small tidbit. One of the things that got Matt Patricia, in trouble in Detroit defensively is that he likes to play a lot of cover one. He likes to play a lot of man-to-man. And when people said that he should temper it, he doubled down, and it didn't go well. So he's going to have to monitor that, somewhat. There's a great balance in everything. I don't care whether you're talking about playing man or whether you're talking about playing zone or whether you're talking about pressures, 5-man pressures, or whether you're talking about all-out blitzing or blitzing, okay? There's a balance to that has to happen. And he's got to know when to go, when not to go, when to play it safe, and when to be more aggressive. And if you can get a good mixture of that, now we can keep our defenses, or offenses, out of balance. We became so predictable in just being soft and passive that defenses could take advantage of everything that we were trying to do defensively.
One thing that we will get into is a positive note. Again, Jalen Hurts is up, is active, and will be starting despite the illness and flying out to Seattle. So he'll be getting the start tonight, and we'll break that down and what his presence, of course, means to this offense. And with all the headlines surrounding the defense, we need to really analyze what's been going on with this offense and why that has been sputtering down the stretch. We'll be back in a moment here on the